Alright, this is story number 2. Story number 2 is entitled Nature's Tomb. It's in 2 parts. The first part is the planet being formed. The second part is today and now. So, this is what it looks like. When the planet's being formed, there was one valley that came off of this continent. We're in the Patagonian mountains. And in this valley was a nice big lake. And it was a plateau. The plateau was a mile up from the valley. When the planet was being formed, the mountains came up around the lake, all the way around the lake, almost to the plateau. They were right below the plateau. You could see them. You could almost jump on them, right? And they stopped. And they all caved in. Now, the animals that were migrating at the time, all of the big animals, just all the dinosaurs and the mammoths. The way this was when the mountain was formed, it left an opening. Over here, there were separate mountains and they came up together, but they left an opening. And in the middle of that was a lake. And the animals knew they would go that way. They either had to go around it or they had to go in it and come out the other side. Well, as time went by, there was a volcano that started erupting. The animals were migrating, and all of a sudden they started to charge and started to run, and everything started happening, and nobody knew what was going on, and the volcano was started to spew, and they knew there was a cave. They knew there was safety if they could just get to it. And they all ran, and the ones ran around the side of the one, and about 500 or more ran through the center. And then the volcano exploded, and when it did, it covered the mountains and it locked them in. They were doomed. They could have stayed outside and been barbecued, or go inside with all the other animals that could eat them. So that's what happened. And now the story opens today in Patagonia, up on that plateau up there. There's a big village over to the right. And one guy, he's the poorest guy in the village. He lives out here. He raises like rabbits and stuff that he sells to the people. And and the mountains are there. Nobody thinks anything about it. And it just looks like, that's the way it should be. The story opens today, and there's a tremor, there's an earthquake going on, and the tops of those mountains right underneath the plateau starts to give way. And it just opens up for the first time. Nobody knew anything about it. Opens up. Well, the old guy that lives out there has got grandkids, and the grandkids come to visit him. And they go and they play everywhere, and so they were out there. They started dropping stuff down this hole that they found up there where the rocks had moved. And there was no bottom. And pretty soon, the story got around that there was a cave up there with no bottom. No matter what you dropped, you couldn't hear it. Well, we're looking at the valley below us over a mile down, and this mountain's almost 3/4 of a mile around. But everybody thought it was just a mountain. Okay. Pretty soon some scientists hear about this and they want to find out about it. And they go out there. And they're doing all their stuff. They're working on it and they can't figure it out. Why it's so deep. So what they do, they go back through the village and go down at the bottom of the mountain. And they're at the bottom of the mountain now looking at it. And they realize that there's a different substance here and over there on this mountain. It's volcanic rock where the other part is just mountain. So they start to dig through it. And then they find it. Trapped inside for millennium are over 500 prehistoric animals. Just waiting to be looked at. So it happens. The poorest man in the village is now the richest man anywhere. Thank you. All right, story number 3. Story number 3 is about planet Earth and the problem we've always had with solar flares. It's 200 years from today. The solar flares are making fires, they burn our trees, they're evaporating all of our lakes. What are we going to do? We have to do something about the solar flares. Well, the scientists came up with the idea of making a deflector. It looked like something like this. Now this deflector is built out there on the other side of the space station. It has its own propulsion, its own guidance, its own tracking the sun to realize that when a solar flare is starting to happen and it starts to go, this unit moves right over in front to take the hit. It can move anywhere. It can move anywhere. Now, at the same time, it can also deflect the solar flares out into space in any direction that we want. So that so by being able to do that, we're saving the planet from looking like the moon and Mars, because the solar flares, they have no mercy. They take everything out there is. So, okay. It's a short story. It could be like an hour long. Okay, so we do this. We build it. It's the size of Nevada. We put it up there. We use it. We can deflect. Also, it becomes a weapon. Now we have a weapon for anywhere in the universe that we want to attack. There you go. End of story. Thank you. Story number 4. This story is about the weather. It's a sequel to the movie Twister. A young scientist comes up with the idea, don't control the weather, stop the weather. And what he means by that is that if you have a twirl of water and you take a 3x5 card and you stick it in there, it stops. Stop the weather. He gets together with the government people, the Air Force, and they realized that if they can separate that air, that twister is going to stop because it doesn't have the force because you separate it. So on a twister, you would take a computer to realize here's a twister, and you would use a concussion bomb here, here, or here and here. The computer would let them go off, and what they're made of is flash powder. That's the fastest explosive that we've got. And what we're trying to do is take the twister and separate it. Just separate it just a little bit to stop the airflow. That's all we need to do, stop the airflow. Okay, this goes on for a couple of years. They kind of got that down. But the storms in the ocean, when you fly above them, they look like this down there. Well, they came up with the idea of dropping 12 bombs, 6, 6, 6, and 6 at a certain level. And when they go down through this twister, they explode at the same time to stop the flow. It's real easy. Stop the flow, stop the twisting, stop the air current, and you've stopped it. It's not going anywhere. It's going to die out there in the ocean and not make landfall. All right. One of the last things they came up with was an automatic concussion bomb. And when the twister got in the perimeter of your house, it would open up. The rocket would come up, ready to go. The computer would set it right where its weakest point was, the least amount of air that's in this turbulent, and fire and try to knock that out right before it got to the house. It was the last thing to do. It could have saved the house or not, but it could have even turned it away. It could have gone another direction. But remember, don't try to stop. Don't try to control the weather. Stop the weather. Thank you. Okay, Robert, if you can, put this in on the end of it. I'd like to say that these 4 stories, I want to sell them. And the reason I want to sell them, and I need to get some money, I need to have some work done on me. And I need to get some money. So if any of these are for, if you have a buyer for any of these,